Okay, I think I have the camera facing the right way around again, but I need you to know. Right, I will murder you. Okay, great, good. I'm glad we're on the same page for once. 2, 3, 4, beep, boop, 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 boo. Do 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 do. It's Wednesday, so I don't know if you noticed that, but I flipped the thing around trying to be a goof, and it came back. It hit me in the face. Analogy. All right. This is the third take I've done today because I keep getting very frustrated and angry, and I'm trying really hard in the year 2021, right, and into the future to not be so angry. But when you're a shouty idiot who comes from a long line of shouty idiots, that can be difficult. But what I remembered is that earlier today, a very hot Armenian dry cleaner flirted with me. So, and if that's not a pick of the week, you see how I brought those together? Sex and comic books. Let me tell you, those are usually completely disparate unless I'm involved. All right, first up, yeah, we'll do something like this. The unobvious pick of the week, Future State Swamp Thing #1. This is by the Detective Comics publisher. Future State is a really dumb idea that DC has had, and I will honestly doff my cap for really sticking to your guns as far as dumb publishing ideas go. I feel at this point, though, it's also, now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, well, it's pure speculation on my part, but I'm fairly convinced at this point that Warner Brothers would rather not publish comic books anymore. And having collected them for over 30 years now, I can't say as I blame them. I mean, I guess this is a way to go. So, from what I've gathered, because I haven't read very extensively, DC has put on pause every title for the next 2 months. And they're only going to be doing these Future State books. And there's Future State Batman, Future State Superman, Future State blah. So it's yet another, because I feel like DC does this more than Marvel does, is yet another glimpse into the future where, Bruce Wayne's third nephew or whatever, third nephew removed, is that a thing? Look up the nephew thing. Is now Batman or something like that. So I don't know what all is going to await me here in this issue of Future State Swamp Thing #1, but it's written by Ram V, who I've seen the name around a lot, and I think I've read. I want to say, like, a lot of times with I don't know if it's I don't want to gender anyone, but a lot of times when new writers, or a lot of times with writers with names like this that I just kind of recognize, it's usually because they've written fill-in stories for Marvel or something like that. Or possibly even for DC. I feel like Ram V wrote at least some of the stories in those 100-page / 80-page giants DC was doing last year. But I can't be 100%. What I do know is that Swamp Thing is one of my favorite DC characters, and I don't like every single creative team on Swamp. Like, I haven't liked every single Swamp Thing book that's ever come out, but I've liked most of them. It's a hard character to really goof up too badly. I dropped when they had the New 52 Swamp Thing. I started with that, and then did I keep it? Gosh, now I think I might be confusing it with Animal Man. Because Animal Man and Swamp Thing and New 52 crossed over a lot, and maybe that was it, because I wasn't reading Animal Man, and then Swamp Thing didn't make any sense, so I stopped reading that. I'd have to check, but I think, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I think I do. In fact, yeah, actually, I think Scott Snyder wrote that run of Swamp Thing, and it was really overshadowed by his run on Batman. I'm sure he's really brokenhearted about it. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything, right? Here's the obvious pick of the week, Eternals #1. This is by the Marvel Comics group, right? It's written by Kieron Gillen and drawn by Esad Ribic, or Ribic, as I think this little accent mark is over here. I'm very unfamiliar with the Eastern European languages. But he's a tremendous artist, one of my favorite artists. He drew most, if not all, of Jason Aaron's run on The Mighty Thor, or just Thor, sorry. And, he pops up and stuff. There's another book that he's done that is Esad Ribic, but I don't remember what it is now. Kieron Gillen, I haven't heard from in a very long time. Kieron Gillen, as I'm sure all of you know, I don't know where I was going to giggle about something cute, and then I didn't even remember what that was. Boy, if I look taller, it's because I'm standing on fully 2 feet of dirty laundry on the floor of my closet right now. Goodness. Please don't tell my drill sergeant. What was I talking about? All right, comic books. Oh, Kieron Gillen. I first knew the name from just kind of some indie stuff that he had done. I want to say even before the bigger stuff. God, Oh, that's right. Him and Jamie McKelvey, the artist Jamie McKelvey, they're both from Scotland, or they're both from the UK. They're both from that part of the world, and they did a book called Phonogram, which was about records and record collectors. I think I have at least the first couple, if not the first three trades, and I don't believe I have read them yet. And I don't remember why. I think, because it seems like it'd be right up my alley because I'm super into records and stuff too, but I honestly can't tell you. I think I just didn't want to. I don't know. They also, the two of them, I believe, did another book, the name of which is completely eluding me now. But it was like a David Bowie, it was like a glam rocky science fiction-y thing. And I'm trying to remember now because Kieran Gillen was a bit of an indie darling, is still. And then he started working for Marvel a lot. But I haven't seen his name in a while, as I say, so maybe I should have looked it up before I came. I'll look it up before I come in tomorrow. Because what else is that this is also the first Eternals title since 2008, which I knew it had been a minute, but I didn't realize it had been that long. And if I'm not very much mistaken, that 2008 Eternals series was Neil Gaiman. It could be that there was another Eternals series, since then, but it wasn't of any interest to me for whatever reason, like the creative team or something, but I don't know. What's weird is that this also kind of honestly looks like the first cover to Neil. It was Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr., I believe. And they're I don't know, maybe that's an homage of some sort. I don't know. And then finally today, I bought this little indie darling. This is Murders. Well, I don't know how darling it is. I haven't read it yet. This is it's a littler book, as you can see, but honestly, it just looked a lot like this one, Summer, which I thought I had. Yeah, it's right here. It looked like a lot like the sort of the same blue pencil as in this one, Summer, and I really dig that look. So I don't know, honestly, really, if you put a yearbook page on your cover, I'm going to be intrigued. I don't know why that is. The Fourth Spitz record can attest to that. Although I would have bought that if it had my mother being punched in the face on the cover. It's a very good record. The Fourth Spitz. Please don't punch my mother in the face. I don't know these creators. It's Dave Baker and Nicole Gou, who I want to say that's right because it's French. And look, she even autographed it. I believe she's local, so this I just bought. I didn't meet her, fortunately for her, but I did buy this from Galaxy of Comics in the corner of Luis and Satacoin, beautiful Van Nuys, California. As always. Oh, it's the first thing of the year. Oh, who cares? And then finally today, which I may not get to in time for next week, but I'm gonna enter this into the record. Tell the clerk. This is The Pits of Hell by Ibisu Yoshikazu. This is a manga. And if I'm not, Jesus, now that I'm thinking about it, this is the first manga I have ever bought. You know why? It has hell in it. Smarten up, manga publishers. I'm kidding, of course. This is, according to the back blurb here, it says, finally published the horribly infamous, most ridiculous work in the history of manga. So, I mean, what could go wrong? It does look pretty good. It isn't that weird. You have to read it backwards. This is the front cover, even though it opens on this side. But I'm looking forward to it. I don't read a lot of manga, and honestly, it's a bit of a source of embarrassment. Really, Jimmy, that's the source of embarrassment for you, that you don't read that much manga. Believe it or don't. Because I really do. I know I read a lot of superhero comics. They're obviously like amongst my favorite kind of comic book. But I really just love comic books. Like the whole thing. The format of words and pictures, whether it's a comic book or a movie or something, you know what I mean? Like words and pictures together. Obviously books don't have normally as many pictures, but they usually have some sort of visual component, right, on the cover, if nothing else. And even if there's nothing on the cover, I took a upper level college course once upon a time. What's your point, Jim? My point is that was Picks Out of the Week. Ba-da-ba-da-boo-doo. No, my point is that I feel like I always say that. I love comics. It doesn't matter what they're about. Yes, I'm partial to Marvel comics, but I'll read anything. I'll read DC superheroes. I'll read romance, no, a lot of romance, but I'll read horrors, westerns, science, blah, 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 blah. Any sort of, or just, like this one, Summer again, for example, which is really just like a coming of age story. If you can put it into words and pictures, I'll buy it. But with manga, I do have a very big blind spot. And I don't think it's a racist thing on my part, because I do, eat sushi all the time. No, I don't think like it's not like I feel like some people don't read manga because it's too Japanese for them, and I kind of get it, even though that does sound racist. I never really got into manga just because honestly the kind of the generic manga style that was big when I was a kid just never did anything for me. It's the same with anime. I when I was 15, I walked into a screening room at a comic book convention and they were showing Akira, which I'd never even heard of. And I walked in at the motorcycle chase scene, which if you've seen, you know I was immediately like, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen. But then my mom came and got me and I had to leave. So years later, when I finally watched it in its entirety, I was bored out of my mind after that motorcycle chase scene is in the first 10 minutes. So yeah, and like I had one of my oldest and dearest friends. He's a big anime guy, and he like dragged me to the Cowboy Bebop movie, and I enjoyed it. But it's just it's not something I normally seek out. But if it's going to be horribly infamous and most ridiculous, and also mention hell in the title, well, now we're cooking with gas. You know what I'm saying? Now the white man wants it. What am I on about? Oh, you know why? It's because it's because the rednecks are taking over literally trying to take over the country. And I actually use literally correctly. But you know what? Enough of that. Let's get into picks of last week. Ba-da-ba-doo-ba-doo. I really, really, really do also want to get back to only doing 10-minute episodes, but I'm having a day. And I read a bunch of really good comics last week, aside from the 3 that I showed you. So I want to talk about a couple of them as well. If I can even remember what it was I wanted to talk about. First up, King Size Conan #1. This is a lot of fun. About what I expected anyway. I remember the Roy Thomas story being exactly what I'd hoped for. Very Roy Thomas Conan. The Kevin Eastman story was okay, but it was definitely nothing you couldn't live without. I mean, even if you're a Kevin Eastman completist, which I can't imagine anyone is. Nothing against Kevin Eastman, he just hasn't done a ton of stuff. I mean, unless you wanted to buy every single piece of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles merchandise ever, in which case, best of luck to you with your billions of dollars. The Kurt Busiek story was really good. In fact, I think, and it was excuse me, this is one of those things that I was thinking about reading it, is that Kurt Busiek wrote Conan for a couple years at least, I want to say, when Conan was on the Dark Horse publisher, and his run was really good. I believe I have that whole run. I think, in fact, that's one of the few Conan runs that I have every issue of, because I really like Busiek, and I really like his work on this. So he did a story that centered around the Tower of the Elephant, which was a very well-regarded short story by Robert E. Howard, Conan and the Tower of the Elephant, I think. I guess I should have read these before I started talking about them. Anyway, my point is, I'm pretty sure Busiek just tied this story back into his own run. But I always like that, because it's like, oh, right, I remember he was really into this storyline. And also, I kind of like the idea that, I don't know maybe it's because I want to be a professional writer one day when I grow up, but to think that they're like, hey, Kurt, can you do us a quick Conan short story? And he looks over at the pages he cut out of his own thing, like, yeah, I think I can probably get something together. I don't know that's what it happened, but I want to believe. What was after that? No, okay, that's right. Yeah, the rest of the stories are fine. But what I did want to point out was Chris Claremont needs to stop writing comic books, dude. Just stop it. He's got a story in this, and it is quite honestly one of the worst comic book stories I've ever read in my life. I love Chris Claremont's X-Men, and I love Chris Claremont for having written the X-Men for so long. I in no way regret enjoying his work or anything like that, but this was garbage. I'm trying not to swear again, too. It was garbage. So just stop it, dude. You don't need the money. You had a small part in X-Men 3. Show some dignity. After that, I read the Ginny Hex special #1. This was really fun. Very, 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 very little to do with Jonah Hex directly, which, whatever. The character, though, is very much like she's a direct descendant of Jonah Hex, and she's very much in character. Like, she's not a piece of shit like Jonah Hex was sometimes, but she's a badass. She's not to be messed with. And yeah, like I was saying before, I have not read any Young Justice, but this kind of, you don't need to have read Young Justice to follow what's going on here, but I guess it wouldn't have helped. And yeah, it was good. I don't really have much else to say. It was a real fun, it was like a sci-fi western-y thing. A little more sci-fi than western, if I'm being honest, but it was still great. I mean, I wouldn't mind if they gave her her own title, but I'd really rather they just brought Jonah Hex back also. Not rather, but all. Oh, yeah, okay. And then I read Ghost Rider Return of Vengeance #1. This was, again, exactly what I expected. It was very much a 90s throwback. It was really Mackie. It really felt like Mackie and Saltierra being like, yeah, let's do another Ghost Rider book. Why not? I mean, I guess it's possible, and this is, again, I'm always speculating on this sort of thing. But I think they even actually said, all right. The special issue began development over 4 years ago. So that would have been around when Marvel was doing those From the Vault books. I believe, yeah. And so that's probably all. And why it took so long, they don't say, but yeah, it was good. Vengeance is, again, was a character I was not soups familiar with. I know I read, or I'm reasonably certain I read, you know, his original appearances in the Ghost Rider title, because that was a favorite of mine. But also it's that thing where if I think about it, it was a favorite of, that Ghost Rider, that title was a big favorite of mine when I was like 14. That's what I mean, is that it was like, oh, it was for a long time, and then I go, well, it's just when I was in 9th grade, that's not that long a time. But I am trying to fill in the rest of these, so I'm happy to have this as part of the collection. What else did Jimmy read last week? Well, I'll tell you. Happy New Year. I read Doctor Doom #10. This appears to be the final issue of this series. I hope they give him his own title again, because Doctor Doom is honestly, remains one of the most compelling villains that Marvel's ever had, certainly. Which is weird, because he's obviously very, very, very old. And it kind of, you know, I mean, you read the old original FFs, and it's very, what's the word I want? You know, it's very melodramatic. It's very much like, oh, you foolish mortals, and that kind of thing. But the way they've been playing Doctor Doom in the books, geez, since at least the Mark Waid run on Fantastic Four, I want to say, but probably before that, they've really done a lot to give Doom. Yeah, like, I think it was Ed Brubaker had a miniseries called Books of Doom, which filled in a lot of, so he's become more and more sympathetic a character. But the thing about it is, every time they make him more sympathetic, he will turn around and do the most evil thing ever. Like, more than even you would expect Doctor Doom to do. And this is no exception. This is written by Christopher Cantwell, which I do believe has been writing the Iron Man series that I've been like, oh, I'd never heard of this guy before. I didn't realize he was also writing Doctor Doom. He is more of a TV writer, I understand, but whoo, this was really good. And you got Salvador Larroca on art. You can't go wrong. I would imagine all 10 of these would be collected into one trade eventually. I also imagine they probably want to line their pockets a little bit more, so there might be 2 trades right now, or, you know, eventually. I'd wait till the full edition or whatever. But it's really good. Doctor Doom, 10-issue series. I'm fairly certain. This felt very final. Because, like I say, Doom does not disappoint in being Doctor Doom. For that, I had #2 was The Taskmaster. I talked about the first issue because I really like this character, and I continue to really like this character, but I wanted to bring this up because Hyperion's in it from the Squadron Supreme. And so this was super fun issue because Hyperion is basically Superman. Hyperion is Marvel's kind of analog version of he is an analog for Superman, not analog compared to digital. Yes, I will shut up when I'm good and ready. They fight in this and it's fun. No, it's one of those things. This is one of the reasons I like Taskmaster so much. And one of the reasons I think like most people like kind of the slippery villainous types is that Taskmaster is, oh, there's a word for it that they use that I can't remember now, but he's able to observe, basically he's able to observe anyone's, it's like he's a kinetic sponge of some sort. Like he can observe anyone's movements and then perfectly mimic them. And he mostly uses it for fighting, but he can just walk like a guy so that you think it's him. He was trying to do this in a comic book store of all places, and they had to fight Hyperion. So Hyperion beats the crap out of him because he's Hyperion. But then the Taskmaster is able to pull it out in the end, and like, you know, he's able to outsmart Hyperion by just a little bit. Because, and this is my favorite kind of story, brains win over brawn. Now, you and I both know that that is not true. But when it's a fantasy comic book, oh boy, is it ever true, and it's fun to see. So yeah, if you've not picked up the first issue of Taskmaster, I'm sure you can still find 1 and 2 at your local funny book store. This might be a little bit harder. This is Night Hunters #1. I tried to buy this at my funny book store, but unfortunately Warren was able to put his hands to it for me. This is published by Floating World Comics, who I believe published the last run of the all-time comic stuff. And also, yeah, Zirit here. Oh, is this the same Baker that does the thing? Oh, that would be... Sorry. Zirit is an artist. I can't remember his first name or his first 2 names, but he's a South American artist, and him and another guy did a book a couple years ago called Space Raiders, and then they did a sequel called Space Raiders Legacy of Brutality, which is a Misfits reference, which already was my favorite book from that point. And it's really good. Very... Oh, and Night Hunters is very much in the same vein. These guys do very... I don't think Baker did the Space Raiders too, but I should, again, have looked it up, I guess. It's very dirty. It's very much... It reads like... Dirty in, like, how it looks, and also there's... It's adult. It's like... You know, once, like, somehow in the 70s, heavy metal really cornered the market on adult fantasy, as they call it, which is basically sci-fi and fantasy with boobs and swearing. And that's fine. It would be nice if there was a middle ground, though, is that, like, you know, especially when I was growing up, you either had Comics Code Authority approved Big 2 superhero books, or you had Heavy Metal Magazine, which you had to get your, you know, older cousin to buy at the liquor store for you, because they wouldn't sell it to you as a kid. If there was something in the middle, oh, these guys' work. So yeah, this is a futuristic dystopia in Rio, I want to say, Rio de Janeiro, somewhere like that. Or maybe it's in Venezuela. That would make more sense because I think they're Venezuelan. But yeah, it's a story about 2 brothers growing up in poverty, and then a horrible thing happens, and then they kind of part ways, and now they found each other again on opposite sides of the law. But honestly, it just looks so good, and it's like in a way that's very raw and rough, which I really have been coming around to more and more, since birth, I would say. So, like, it looks really good. It's on newsprint, which also just is a tactile feel I like better. Well, it's not newsprint, but it's not magazine stock. It's a little coarse paper. Good Lord, am I nerding out over here or what? I don't want to go back out into the world. Nobody wants to talk about comic books. Well, I should call my friend Greg. Yeah. I just really like this guy's stuff. I don't know what else to tell you. And also, if you can tell from the cover, these guys definitely, and Space Raiders was the same way. I hope that's the name. Very 80s. They are all very 80s action movie. Because I'm assuming these guys are all about my age or a little bit younger. So whatever they ingested as kids is really coming out here, but in a much more interesting way than most people regurgitate their childhoods. And finally, solid half hour at the top of the year, Post Americana #1. I was on the fence about buying this at all, to be honest with you. It's written and drawn by Steve Scroce, who I do know the name, but I couldn't tell you what from. Again, I guess I should have done more research. I've been very busy. This is, Dave Stewart does the colors, and this is the reason I was on the fence about it was because it looked like a pretty generic post-apocalyptic sort of future, and especially setting it in America just felt too much like Undiscovered Country, which is still ongoing by the same publisher. Saying it out loud, I'm still like, yeah, but why would they do another one of these? But the reason they did is because it's really good. Scroce is doing something that, again, not dissimilar to Night Hunters. It's a dystopian future, and it's dirty, but it's not heavy metal, but it's not Comics Code approved either. It's kind of in the middle. There's a character who's actually named the Flying Fuck. I'm not supposed to swear, but that's the character's name. That's the sort of thing I mean. Like, it's not made to be, it's not really, the joke is not hammered into your face, and the characters don't make a big deal out of it. Like, that's just his name. That's the sort of thing that I mean. Like, it's very, Post-Americana, if I'm going to get more grad school, it's very unself-conscious, and that's why it is a late addition to Picks of Last Week. So yeah, that's really good. Pick it up. All right, I'm gonna go now. Whoop, I guess I should probably do this time. All right, everybody, I'll try to look up more stuff before I come on next week. But since